On the morning of her wedding anniversary, Anita expected roses, not divorce papers, and certainly not to find her husband in bed with her sister. Betrayed by the two people she trusted most, Anita's perfect life shatters in a single moment. But as she walks away from the penthouse and the ashes of everything she built, she doesn't yet know that this ending is the beginning of a transformation far greater than revenge. Hello family, welcome to True Life Stories. Please subscribe and leave a like for us, it means the world to us. Also share this video to your friends and loved ones and turn on post notifications so you don't miss future videos from us. Thank you as you do so. Sit back and relax as we dive into the story. The sunlight spilled through the tall windows of the penthouse, painting the marble floors with a golden glow. The soft hum of the city below filtered in through the sheer curtains, and Anita stood in the kitchen, humming as she plated breakfast. The scent of cinnamon and vanilla lingered in the air, French toast his favorite. She smiled to herself, smoothing her silk robe, her heart warm with anticipation. 5 years of marriage. She had spent days planning the surprise. Reservations at the restaurant where he first told her he loved her. A custom-made timepiece engraved with the coordinates of where they met. She even commissioned an artist to recreate a photo from their honeymoon in Santorini. Everything had to be perfect. Daniel had been distant lately, busy with work, distracted. But she told herself it was just stress. Life, after all, got in the way sometimes. Today would remind them of what they had. She heard the elevator chime. Her heart skipped. She hurried to the door, brushing invisible creases from her robe. When she opened it, there he stood, Daniel, suited, handsome, unreadable. In his hand was a sleek black envelope. "Happy anniversary," she said softly, reaching to kiss him. He didn't lean in. Instead, he held the envelope out. "What's this?" she asked, laughter in her voice. "Is this part of the surprise?" "Open it," he said, voice flat. Confused, Anita slipped a finger under the seal and pulled out the papers. Her eyes scanned the top line. Petition for dissolution of marriage. She blinked. Then again. Her breath caught. "Daniel, what is this?" Her voice trembled. "I want a divorce." The words hit like a punch. Cold. Brutal. No build-up, no explanation. Anita staggered back a step, unable to process. You want a divorce? Today." He didn't meet her eyes. "It's been over for a long time, Anita. You just didn't want to see it." Her heart pounded against her ribs. No, you don't just on our anniversary. I didn't want to drag this out anymore." She shook her head. "Is there someone else?" Silence. And then a flicker in his eyes, guilt? Disdain. Anita's breath caught in her throat. She stepped past him, needing air, needing space, and that's when she heard it. A laugh. A woman's laugh. Familiar. She turned sharply, heart already sinking. From the hallway, barefoot and wearing her robe, emerged her younger sister, Cynthia. Her hair tousled, face flushed. "Anita," Cynthia said, startled. "I guess you haven't been told." The robe. The fact she didn't look the least bit sorry. The puzzle came together in an instant. "You," Anita whispered, voice breaking. "You with him?" Daniel stepped forward, suddenly defensive. "We didn't plan for it to happen. But it did. And I'm happier now." Her vision blurred. "You've been sleeping with my sister?" Cynthia had the audacity to look indignant. "You don't understand, Anita. He was miserable. You were always so busy with your career, your image. You didn't see how unhappy he was." Anita stared at her, stunned beyond words. "You're my sister. You had everything," Cynthia snapped. "Perfect life, perfect husband, perfect career. You never even saw how lucky you were." Anita's world spun. Her hands shook. She turned to Daniel. "How long?" He didn't answer. "How long?" "Over a year," he said quietly. A year. That meant they'd started this betrayal while Anita was still planning romantic weekends. While she was still wearing her wedding ring and calling Cynthia to confide about her busy husband. "I loved you both," Anita said, voice hollow. "I would have done anything for either of you." Daniel turned away. "It's done, Anita. Just sign the papers." Tears slipped down her face, but she refused to let herself collapse. "Not here. Not in front of them. She looked around one last time, at the place she had built, the life she had carefully curated, and felt it all fall to ash. Without another word, Anita walked to the closet, grabbed her handbag and phone, and left the penthouse. The door shut behind her with a quiet finality. In the elevator, she stared at her reflection in the mirror. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Eyes red, shoulders shaking, heart shattered. But beneath the pain, something else stirred. A silence that promised rebirth. The hotel room was quiet, sterile. The kind of quiet that echoed. Anita lay on top of the sheets, fully dressed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. The sun had risen hours ago, but the curtains remained shut, sealing her away from the world. The world where Daniel and Cynthia had won. She had slept in that same dress for 3 days now, if you could call it sleep. It was more like drifting in and out of awareness, a blur of aching silence and sudden sobs that struck without warning. Food delivery bags piled on the table. She barely touched them. The thought of eating made her sick. How could they? How could they? Her phone buzzed again. More missed calls from her mother, who didn't know what had happened. Messages from friends. Happy anniversary. 2 hearts. And where are you two celebrating tonight? She deleted them all without reading further. Then she turned the phone off and buried it under a pillow. Days blurred. Grief came in waves, sometimes a dull ache, sometimes a violent scream into the pillow. She cried in the shower until the water ran cold. She cried on the floor, her face pressed into the carpet. But most of the time, she simply didn't move. What was worse wasn't just the betrayal. It was who had betrayed her. She'd practically raised Cynthia. Their parents were always working or fighting, and Anita, older by 4 years, had been her protector. Her shield. She'd helped her get through high school. Helped her with her college applications. She bought her first car. And Daniel. 5 years. 5 years of memories now infected. How many of their date nights were lies? How many times had he texted Cynthia from the bathroom while she waited outside with a glass of wine and hope in her heart? She stopped opening the blinds. It was the hotel manager's knock that finally forced her out of hiding. "Miss, we've extended your stay as long as possible, but your card was declined." That one sentence shattered the last illusion. The joint account was frozen. Daniel had cut her off. A sharp, brutal reminder. She had nothing. No home. No savings in her name. Just a few personal items and her purse. Humiliation burned through the numbness. She nodded quietly, packed the few clothes she had, and walked out of the hotel with a stiff spine and hollow eyes. She slept on her friend Eva's couch for a week. Eva didn't ask questions, just offered her tea and silence. Anita was grateful for both. It was Eva who gently suggested therapy. "You need somewhere to unpack this, somewhere safe. You've been holding everything in for so long, even before this happened." Anita hesitated. She'd never been one to talk about her feelings, especially not with strangers. But one morning, as she sat in Eva's kitchen watching the steam rise from her untouched coffee, something in her broke again. "I don't even know who I am without him," she whispered. Eva slid a card across the table. Her therapist's name was Dr. Mira Benson. Her office was warm, full of books and soft yellow lighting. Anita sat on the couch with crossed arms and a stiff jaw during their first session. "I'm not crazy," she said quickly. "I didn't say you were," Mira replied gently. Silence stretched. Then, quietly, hesitantly, Anita began to talk. At first, it was just about the divorce. The shock. The pain. The betrayal. But over the sessions, the layers unraveled. Her fear of being alone. Her tendency to overachieve to feel worthy. The way she always sacrificed her own needs to keep people happy. Her childhood. The emotional weight she had carried for so long that even she hadn't seen it. Some days she cried. Other days she sat in silence. But she always went back. And little by little, something shifted. It was a cold Monday morning when she walked into Argent and Veil for an interview. Her hair was tied back, her black suit still a bit loose from the weight she'd lost, but her eyes were steadier now. She had prepped all night, reread her old projects, memorized case studies. The managing partner looked at her resume, impressed. You were with Ellison and Clark for 6 years. Why the break? She took a breath. Personal reasons, she said calmly. But I'm ready to work. Harder than ever. She left the interview shaking. But by the time she got back to Eva's, there was already an email. Welcome to Argent and Vale. She stared at the screen for a long time before finally letting out a sound, half laugh, half sob. Her first day at work felt like entering a new universe. People bustled through glass-walled hallways. Deadlines. Strategy meetings. Presentations. It was familiar, comfortingly so. But she was different now. More guarded. More thoughtful. Still healing. She went to therapy twice a week. She kept to herself at work, but her managers noticed her diligence. Her sharp mind. Her ability to anticipate problems before they arose. They didn't know what she had survived, only that she carried herself like someone who had climbed through fire and come out tempered. Every night, Anita went home to her small rented apartment. No view. No marble floors. No city skyline. Just peace. She watered the single plant by her windowsill. She journaled. She took deep breaths. The pain didn't go away completely, but it no longer owned her. 3 months into her new role at Argent and Vale, Anita had found rhythm. Structure. It wasn't joy exactly, not yet, but it was something solid beneath her feet. She rose each morning with purpose, dressed with quiet elegance, and poured herself into the work. Her name began to circulate among senior associates. Efficient, they said. Sharp. Grace under pressure. She still kept to herself. She smiled in meetings, nodded during water-cooler chatter, but offered little about her personal life. People assumed she was just focused. Ambitious. No one guessed she was a woman rebuilding herself from rubble. It was during the third-quarter strategy presentation that everything changed. The firm was pitching a cross-border venture expansion plan to a group of high-profile investors. The room was sleek and cold, glass walls, chrome fixtures, a massive black marble table that reflected the city's skyline. Anita had been asked to lead a section of the presentation, data-driven insights on market volatility. She stood at the far end of the table, clicker in hand, voice steady. Her charts were crisp. Her analysis was razor-sharp. But she barely registered the man seated 2 chairs down from the center, Leon Hartman. She had heard his name before. Everyone in the financial world had. A billionaire venture capitalist with a reputation for turning dust into diamonds. Private. Brilliant. Merciless. Some called him ruthless. Others said he was simply a man who didn't have time for incompetence. Anita wasn't trying to impress him. She was trying to survive another workday. But he noticed her. He noticed the way she translated complex data into strategy. The quiet authority in her voice. The way she held her ground when another investor challenged her numbers. Not defensively, but with calm, unwavering clarity. After the meeting, she returned to her desk, exhaled, and tucked the clicker back into her drawer. It had gone well. That was enough. Or so she thought. That evening, her supervisor knocked on the edge of her cubicle. Anita, he said. Leon Hartman wants to take you to dinner. She blinked. Excuse me? He said he was impressed. Wants to discuss some possible consulting work, just with you. He's requested a one-on-one dinner, strictly business, he said. Up to you, of course. Her stomach twisted. It had been over a year since she'd shared a dinner table with a man alone. That last time, no, she didn't want to go there. Where? She asked quietly. Il Basio. 7:30. The restaurant was high-end, the kind where waiters wore gloves and the menu didn't list prices. Anita arrived early. She wore a black sheath dress with minimal makeup and her hair pulled into a sleek bun. Professional. Unreadable. Leon arrived 5 minutes late. Tailored navy suit. No tie. Calm energy. His eyes met hers across the table with interest, but no predatory glint. That surprised her. Miss Anita, he said with a slight nod. Thank you for accepting. She offered a polite smile. Mr. Hartman. Leon, he corrected. They ordered. For the first 10 minutes, the conversation was exactly what she expected. consulting, emerging markets, private equity strategy. He asked questions no one else ever asked her. He listened, intently, not just to her words, but to her pauses, her pivots. She felt seen. Then, as their entrées arrived, the conversation shifted. "You have the kind of mind that sees through noise," he said, studying her. "Most analysts are buried in data. You read the room." Anita sipped her wine, unsure how to respond. He leaned back. "What I'm saying is, your instincts go beyond numbers. That's rare." She looked at him now, not as the billionaire investor, but as a man. Still unreadable. But something in his tone had softened. "Why me?" she asked. Leon's expression didn't change, but his gaze grew thoughtful. "You walked into that room today with silence. No arrogance. No need to impress. But by the end, you were the only one anyone remembered." That startled her. She'd felt invisible for so long. Forgotten. Replaceable. "Maybe I just stopped needing to be seen," she said quietly. There was a pause. Leon didn't press. Instead, he raised his glass. "To clarity," he said. "To strategy," she replied, keeping the conversation safe. But something had shifted. Over the next few weeks, Leon found reasons to meet again. First for coffee, then another dinner. He sent her an advanced copy of a report and asked for her take, off the record. He invited her to a roundtable event, then insisted she sit at his table. Anita remained cautious. Every interaction was professional, respectful, but the air between them grew warmer, thicker. She caught herself smiling more, laughing at his dry humor, wondering what it might feel like to trust again. One night, after a late meeting that ran over, he walked her to her car. Rain was falling, soft and steady. She opened her umbrella, but he didn't move. "You intrigue me, Anita," he said. She froze. The words were simple, but they landed deep. He wasn't just impressed anymore. She met his eyes, the air charged with something unspoken. "I don't know if I'm ready for more," she said carefully. "I'm not asking for more," he replied. "I'm just asking for now." It wasn't a line. It wasn't a promise. It was a door. And this time, she didn't walk away. Cynthia Hart strode into the master bedroom of the penthouse barefoot, her silk robe dragging slightly across the marble floor. The same robe she had once worn with pride, a robe that had once belonged to her sister. The room was quiet. Too quiet. No music. No scent of candles. No laughter. She checked the time. 9:47 p.m. Daniel wasn't home. Again. Her fingers curled tighter around the crystal wine glass in her hand. She had spent hours getting ready. Her hair perfectly waved, her makeup sculpted to look like effortless beauty. The red dress she bought 3 weeks ago still hung in the closet, untouched. He had texted in the afternoon. "Dinner later. Be ready." She was ready, but Daniel never showed. When they first got together, he had been magnetic, intense, charming, intoxicating. The secrecy, the risk, the way he looked at her like she was something forbidden, it had made her feel like she was finally the one in control. For once, she wasn't in Anita's shadow. She was the center, the chosen one. He whispered things to her. How Anita didn't excite him anymore. How she had become cold, robotic, too focused on work. How he admired Cynthia's wildness, her spontaneity, her youth. It had made her feel invincible. She remembered the first time they slept together. She'd left his apartment afterward trembling with guilt, but a part of her felt powerful, like she had won. But winning had turned out to be a fleeting, hollow thing. These days, Daniel barely looked at her. He was always on his phone, always taking meetings, always traveling for business. They barely spoke over breakfast. He didn't ask how she was, didn't notice when she changed her hair or wore his favorite perfume. When she tried to talk to him, he brushed her off. When she reached for him at night, he turned away. And now, when he came home, if he came home, it was always past midnight. The smell of unfamiliar perfume lingering faintly on his collar. She told herself it wasn't what it looked like. But she knew. It was a Thursday evening when her fears were confirmed. She found a receipt in the laundry. La Riviere, the same exclusive restaurant she had once begged him to take her to. He never had. The bill was for two. The timestamp? The same night she had sat in their bedroom in lingerie for 2 hours waiting for him to come home. Cynthia stood frozen in the closet, staring at the receipt in her shaking hand. She didn't cry. Not yet. Instead, she waited until midnight. When Daniel finally walked in, looking bored and slightly disheveled, she was waiting on the couch in silence. "You've been out again," she said flatly. He tossed his keys in the bowl. Didn't even look at her. "Working. La Riviere?" He froze for a second. Just a second. Then he shrugged off his coat. "Client meeting. With wine pairings and oysters?" Now he looked at her. Tired. Annoyed. Like she was an inconvenience. "Jesus, Cynthia. Don't start." "Who is she?" "I said don't start." Cynthia stood. Her voice shook. "I gave up everything for you. I betrayed my sister, my own blood. I walked into this war for you, and now you're doing the same thing to me." Daniel rubbed a hand down his face. "Maybe that should have told you something." She stared at him. "What? If I could do it to her, what made you think I wouldn't do it to you?" The silence that followed was ice cold. It was the first time he had said it out loud. The truth they both knew but never admitted. "You never loved me," she whispered. "I liked the attention, the drama, the danger," he said casually, pouring himself a drink. But it faded. Cynthia's throat closed. Her chest burned. "Do you even remember what you said to me the night Anita left?" she asked. "You told me I was the one. You said we were going to build a life together." He sipped his drink. "I say a lot of things." That night, Cynthia cried in the bathroom, silent, wrenching sobs that left her crumpled on the cold tile. Her mascara ran black rivers down her cheeks. She clutched the sink like it was the only thing keeping her upright. No one comforted her. No one came to knock. Daniel was already asleep in the guest room. Over the next few weeks, things worsened. Daniel stopped pretending. He answered calls in front of her now, smiling, laughing with someone else. She didn't know her name, but she saw the texts. The heart emojis. The lipstick-stained napkin in his jacket pocket. She tried to match his energy, put on short dresses, cooked elaborate meals, pretended to be unfazed. But she was fading, shrinking. She had no job, no income, no family to run to. Anita hadn't spoken to her in over a year. And rightly so. Then came the final blow. One morning, as Cynthia walked into the kitchen in her pajamas, Daniel was waiting. Dressed. Cold-eyed. An envelope on the table. "What's this?" she asked. "Time for you to go." Her stomach dropped. "What?" "I've moved on." "You said." "I said what I had to say," he cut in. "Now pack your things. I want you out by tonight." She stared at him, disbelief morphing into panic. "I have nowhere to go." He shrugged. "Not my problem." Tears welled in her eyes, but he was already turning away, texting someone. She left that evening with a single suitcase, a torn designer handbag, and a mind full of regret. She didn't even have cab fare. The doorman wouldn't make eye contact. The city air was sharp against her skin. She stood on the curb as the sun set behind her, casting long shadows across the pavement. And for the first time in her life, she understood what Anita must have felt. But worse, because Anita left with her dignity. Cynthia left with nothing but shame. And silence. The rain started just as the taxi pulled away. Cynthia stood on the sidewalk, one hand gripping the handle of her wheeled suitcase, the other holding her phone, a dead screen staring back at her. The last time she charged it was the night before. The charger? Still in the penthouse. No wallet. No cards. No emergency cash. She had left in a blur of tears and disbelief, hoping he would change his mind. That he would come out onto the balcony, call her name, tell her it was just a cruel bluff. He didn't. The penthouse lights never flickered. She stood under the awning of a nearby boutique for almost half an hour, trying not to cry again. Her designer blouse, once a symbol of elegance, was soaked through. The rain clung to her hair and skin like punishment. For the first time in her life, Cynthia felt invisible. No one cared. She tried calling her mother. Voicemail. She tried calling her old roommate from college. Disconnected. She even considered calling Anita, but the shame hit like a slap before her finger reached the dial. She had burned that bridge with gasoline and a smile. Her sister had loved her, protected her, and she had carved out that love with a knife and offered it to a man who never truly wanted her. There was no going back. She ended up sleeping in the waiting area of a 24-hour laundromat, her coat bunched under her head, her suitcase tucked between her knees, the buzzing of washing machines, the smell of detergent and cheap floor cleaner, a crying toddler, a man passed out with a beer can at his feet. This was her life now. Days passed. She lived off coffee shop samples and the free mints at hotel lobbies. Her face became gaunt, lips cracked, eyes sunken. She pawned her handbag for $50. Money she used for a night in a rundown motel where the sheets smelled like bleach and loneliness. At night, she replayed everything. The nights Daniel had whispered promises in her ear. The way Anita had looked at her, broken and speechless, when she realized the betrayal. And now karma had come, ruthless and without ceremony. Cynthia wasn't just heartbroken. She was discarded, used, and finally forgotten. 3 weeks into her free fall, she reached out to a local women's shelter. It took everything in her to walk through the doors. The intake counselor was kind, gentle eyes, warm voice, but Cynthia still felt small. She was given clean clothes, a bed, and a packet of information about job assistance. She hadn't worked in over a year. Daniel said she didn't need to. He told her to focus on being his queen. She had laughed and believed him. Now, with no resume and no contacts, she was just another girl with nothing but a last name and a ruined past. At night, she stared at the ceiling and whispered apologies to a sister who would never hear them. And maybe never should. The worst part wasn't losing the penthouse, or the clothes, or Daniel. The worst part was realizing she had never truly been loved by him, that she had traded loyalty for lies, that the crown she thought she wore was made of paper, and it had crumpled the moment the wind blew. One morning, she sat outside the shelter with a paper cup of coffee, watching the city wake up around her. Couples walking hand in hand, taxis honking, the rhythm of life continuing, untouched by her ruin. She pulled her coat tighter and closed her eyes. This was rock bottom. She knew it. But maybe, just maybe, from here she could start over. Not to reclaim what she lost, but to become someone different. Someone real. Daniel's corner office at Hargrave Capital looked out over the skyline like a throne surveying a kingdom. The floor-to-ceiling windows reflected the city's heartbeat. Glass towers, speeding cars, lights that never dimmed. For years, he had ruled here. Deals sealed with handshakes and champagne. Numbers that danced to his tune. Interns who flinched when he entered the room. He spoke in sharp commands, wore tailored suits like armor, and moved through life as if it bent to his will. He'd gotten away with everything. He had walked away from a loyal wife with no guilt. Taken her sister. Tossed the sister aside when she grew dull. Found someone new, sleek, seductive, dangerous in all the right ways. Savannah. She had appeared in his life like something out of a luxury commercial. Cool, composed, with that perfect balance of beauty and bite. She wasn't like Cynthia. She didn't beg. Didn't cry. She played the game well. Almost too well. And Daniel, ever the predator, didn't see that he had just become prey. He met Savannah at a charity gala 6 months after throwing Cynthia out. She was standing near the art installation, glass of wine in hand, asking pointed questions about ROI and ethical investing. He liked that. Most women at those events flirted. She negotiated. She let him pursue her. Let him feel like he was in control. She turned down his first 2 invitations, made him wait 3 weeks for the first dinner. Played cool. Polished. When she finally said yes, he thought he'd won. What he didn't know was that Savannah already knew everything about him. His business. His habits. His weaknesses. She knew how to flatter him, how to push him, how to get inside his walls without him realizing it. Because Savannah didn't stumble into Daniel's life by chance. She was planted. Behind her smile was a silent war. Savannah worked for Axion Equity, a rival firm Daniel had publicly humiliated in a deal years ago. He'd orchestrated a hostile takeover that ruined their founder, a man named Victor Langston. The name probably didn't even register to Daniel anymore. But Victor remembered. He remembered everything. So he built a different kind of weapon. Not a lawsuit. Not a boardroom ambush. A woman. Savannah was the daughter of one of Victor's closest allies. Sharp. Educated. Beautiful. And more importantly, angry. Victor had trained her personally. Fed her information. Prepared her to infiltrate Daniel's world. And she did. Daniel, arrogant as ever, brought Savannah closer and closer. Gave her access to sensitive information. Let her sit in on strategy meetings, private investor calls. She claimed she was just curious, and he, loving the attention, showed off like a boy with a new toy. He told her about deals before they were public, about internal struggles, about confidential settlements. He thought she was his next conquest. She was building a case, bit by bit, recording every call, saving every document, tipping off the right regulators at the right time. Daniel didn't notice anything wrong, until it was too late. It started with a phone call from the SEC, then another, then headlines. Hargrave Capital under investigation for insider trading. Anonymous whistleblower submits evidence of market manipulation. Daniel's name was everywhere. He stormed into his office, red-faced, demanding answers. His assistant was crying. His CFO had gone radio silent. Investors were pulling out. The board was panicking. And then Savannah disappeared. No calls. No texts. Gone. That same night, Daniel came home to find a manila envelope at his door. No return address. Just his name scrawled across the front. Inside, printed emails. Transcripts. Audio recordings. His voice. His lies. His downfall. And a single note. You should have never underestimated the people you crushed on the way up. VL. Daniel staggered to the bar, hands shaking. He poured whiskey into a crystal glass and stared at his reflection in the mirror behind the liquor bottles. For the first time in years, he didn't recognize the man staring back. Within weeks, Hargrave Capital began to implode. Clients pulled their funds. Lawsuits piled up. Regulatory hearings loomed. Daniel was suspended, stripped of authority, and advised by his own lawyers to lay low. But it was too late. The media devoured him. Old stories resurfaced. The divorce. The scandal with his wife's sister. Cynthia's public breakdown. Now insider trading. He wasn't a genius anymore. He was a liability. A symbol of greed, betrayal, and ego. He sat alone in his now empty penthouse, the lights off, curtains drawn. The silence that once felt powerful now felt like a tomb. No wife. No mistress. No allies. No legacy. The empire he had built, on charm, deception, and ambition, had crumbled. And somewhere out there, Anita was thriving. That thought haunted him most. She had walked away broken. And now she was whole. While he at last understood what it meant to be truly ruined. The morning light filtered through linen curtains, casting golden warmth across Anita's kitchen table. A quiet peace lived in the apartment now. Not the cold, echoing silence of the penthouse she once called home, but a soft, lived-in quiet, the kind that didn't ache anymore. The kettle clicked off. She poured her tea and opened her journal, the pages already filled with months of thoughts, fears, hopes, healing. 1 year and 7 months. That's how long it had been since she signed the divorce papers and walked away from everything she thought her life was supposed to be. And now, she felt light, rooted, whole. Across the city, on the 47th floor of a modern high-rise, Leon Hartman watched her speak during a live-stream event, a panel on women in finance. Her voice was clear, measured, intelligent without arrogance, confident without bravado. He remembered the first time he saw her, composed but guarded, like a woman holding herself together with invisible thread. Now she didn't just speak. She commanded. Their relationship hadn't followed any formula. Leon never tried to fix her. He simply made space for her voice, her fears, her silence. When they first started dating, he moved slowly, respectfully. They shared long conversations, late dinners, walks through quiet parks. He never pushed her for more. He just kept showing up. And Anita, tentative, scarred, careful, began to trust again. Not all at once, but one thread at a time. By the time they kissed, it wasn't a spark. It was a slow burn that felt safe and sacred. Anita didn't let love eclipse her identity this time. She built herself first. She earned a promotion at Argent and Vale, then eventually left to co-found a boutique consulting firm that specialized in women-led startups. She gave her time to mentorship programs. She used what she had survived to guide others toward what they deserved. She even returned to therapy, not because she was broken, but because she respected the value of maintenance, of emotional clarity. And then came the idea that changed everything. A foundation dedicated to helping women reclaim their lives after betrayal, divorce, financial dependence, or emotional abuse. The Phoenix Fund. Leon was the first investor, but the vision was hers. The launch night was magical. Soft lights, string quartet, a rooftop space filled with women in vibrant colors, survivors and supporters alike. No pity, no pretense. Anita stood at the podium in an ivory pantsuit, simple gold earrings, her hair in a low bun. Her voice carried across the night air. We don't rise by erasing the past. We rise because we carry it forward and choose not to be defined by it. The room erupted in applause. Leon watched from the front row, pride in his chest, but never possessiveness. He didn't see her as his success story. She had done this on her own. Cynthia hadn't been invited. Not out of spite, simply out of boundaries. Anita had forgiven her quietly, in therapy, on pages of a journal, in whispered prayers. But forgiveness didn't mean reconnection. Cynthia had once wanted everything Anita had. Now Anita had something Cynthia could never steal. Peace. And Daniel, he had become a cautionary tale in business articles. His name, once whispered with awe in elite circles, was now synonymous with hubris. The last time Anita heard about him, he was fighting a lawsuit and trying to rebrand himself with an Instagram motivational series that got maybe 300 views per video. She didn't care. She didn't wish him pain. She just didn't wish for him at all anymore. After the event, Leon found her standing near the edge of the rooftop, looking out over the glittering city. He slid beside her, not speaking at first. Then, you ever think about how different things might have been if none of it happened? She didn't hesitate. No. He turned to her, curious. I used to, she said. But if none of it happened, I would have stayed asleep in a life that was never meant for me. Leon took her hand, laced his fingers through hers. And now, he asked. She looked at him. Now I'm awake. And I don't regret waking up. They stood there, side by side, wind brushing against their faces, the city glowing beneath them. No broken glass. No final revenge. Just a woman who had lost everything, and then built something better. From ashes to fire. From fire to flame. We have come to the end of the story. I hope you enjoyed it. Leave a like and subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories.